Hi folks, good morning, or whatever time of day it is. I am back with the Shedcast. I'm sorry I've not recorded for quite a while, just been really busy and, to be honest, not really in the headspace. And it's one of those things, the longer you leave it, the more overwhelming it becomes, because you just have like more and more and more stuff to talk about, and then it's like, oh god, when am I ever going to fit that in? So I've decided I'm not going to talk about all the stuff that I've done since the last Shedcast, because hopefully you've seen it on social media and stuff anyway. But I'm just going to pop in. I think what I might try and do for the Shedcast for a bit is do them shorter, like a lot shorter, but more frequently, maybe. So just pop in for individual things rather than let everything build up and then have loads of stuff to get through. So and I'll just tell you where we're up to in case anyone's ever watching this like in a few years' time. Right now the UK is back in lockdown number 3, and we had a press conference from Boris Johnson yesterday, I'm losing track, setting out a roadmap of our way out of lockdown and all this sort of thing. All I'm going to say is that he said, it's my intention for it to be irreversible, thus demonstrating that he doesn't even know the meaning of irreversible. So we shall see how that pans out. But for now, lots of things are closed. It's not like lockdown 1 where everything was completely dead. It doesn't feel that abnormal, other than like you obviously can't socialise, can't get a haircut, which is a bit of a nightmare when you've got very short hair. And yeah, just other than that, we're just cracking on with work and yeah, trying to keep the creativity and that sort of thing going. And thank goodness we have got it. So, excuse me, I've literally just eaten my breakfast and had my first coffee of the morning. So, because I've got lots of dyeing to do today, and I wanted to get this recorded before I go and head out to the dye shed. So the big piece of news that's happened already this week, yesterday, Monday, so we're cracking on, is that our Rokeby cowl pattern was published. It was done sort of after I'd finished work last night, so I haven't shouted about it on social media yet, but I will be doing when I've recorded this. And here it is. So I'm indoors and I've got both lights on, so I'm hoping that the lights aren't throwing the colours off too much. It might be making things look slightly more yellowy than they would outdoors. But this is Milburn 4-ply in Estuary and Wicker. Wicker's sort of an oatmeal colour. I think that on my screen it looks like it's coming over okay. And obviously Estuary is this lovely, is it a sky blue? It's not, maybe not a sky blue, but denim maybe. Anyway, it's gorgeous blue. Sort of clashes with the blue that I'm wearing. that was a bit silly, wasn't it? Anyway, so this is the Rokeby cowl. It's this lovely houndstooth pattern. Would you like to see the inside? Because I rather like the inside as well. A bit weird, us knitters, aren't we? There you go. There's my floats. So as you can see, hopefully, these floats are all very short, which is very useful if you struggle with your tension when you're knitting Fair Isle. You never have to carry your floats across more than 3 stitches at a time. So I personally found that really nice and easy to tension. This is knitted on 3mm needles, well, a circular. So it's got quite a nice drape to it. It feels really soft and silky. And I'll show you how it looks on. You can see the back because there's just a stitch between the beginning and end of the rounds, which saves you being able to see the jog between the patterns. So that's it on. So that's about the size that it is. Now, obviously, if you wore a jacket, you could really kind of smush it up around your neck, which is what I prefer with cowls. But I've actually been wearing it like this. And personally, I think that works really, really well. That's not quite in half, that's just with the top tucked in. So that's really nice and cozy and lovely. So it uses 150-gram ball of each colour. And I've tried to do it so that you use up almost the entire ball so that you don't end up with scrappy leftovers. But I didn't quite use the entire ball of each colour because I thought it would also be useful to allow for differences in tension, which will affect the amount of yarn that you use. So rather than knitting right until the very last inch of yarn, I've gone to like the last couple of grams so that you've got sort of a small enough amount to chuck out or whatever you do with the tiniest scraps. I send them to the textile recycling actually. And yeah, so I didn't want it to be like 10 grams of each colour left over, that sort of thing, you know. So yeah, 1 ball of Milburn 4-ply in each colour. And obviously this allows for lots of playing around with the colours and contrast. Just be aware of sort of high and low contrast. If you're struggling with it, take a picture or make a collage, you can do it from screenshots, of the 2 colours that you're thinking of using. Change the photo to black and white, and if you can't tell much of a difference between them, there won't be very much contrast. Or if you're sort of quite a visual person and you can imagine the colours in black and white, then you'll be able to look and see that's not going to have enough contrast. Okay, so that's the Rokeby cowl. It's available on our website, obviously, and that is our preference. It is also on Ravelry, but with their sort of accessibility issues, which seem to be ongoing, and there's absolutely no resolution in sight over that, we're not recommending that people use it, and we certainly don't expect you to. And we're not sort of promoting that. But it is on there if you are still using it and sort of want to have it in your library or anything. But obviously we would really prefer to use our website. And we're really glad that we've got that now, because it means we've already got a place where all our patterns are. So yeah, that's a tricky one, isn't it? Anyway, so that's the Rokeby cowl. Now, why did that come about? Well, back in 2010, I designed a pair of houndstooth fingerless mittens with an option to make them into fingerless gloves or add a flip top, called Rokeby. I don't know if I said that about the cowl. The cowl's called Rokeby cowl. I probably did, but anyway, just to be clear. And that's Rokeby, Rokeby. So anyway, the Rokeby fingerless mittens were first released in 2010. Can't believe it. And they were done in Milburn as well. Obviously, you know, play around with your 4-plies, but were they done in Milburn? Yeah, they were. Were they? No, the first pair, because I was thinking, I didn't have Milburn at that point, there can't have been. No, the first pair was done in Bowland 4-ply. That's what it was. In fact, I've still got them. over in I've got a veg crate box thing that I use, that's got like all my fingerless mittens stacked in it, and they're over there actually. Yeah, Bowen 4-ply, and then it was soon converted to Milburn 4-ply once I got that. That must have been about 2014, I think, because I'm sure that that's when Milburn came out. Anyway, fast forward to now, and I've been wanting for ages to give the whole pattern a complete revamp, and it was finally time to get on and do it. Especially because recently we got the latest new colour of Milburn 4-ply, which is Dusk, which is a pale greyish purple. And I have that here. So this is Dusk and Black Tulip, and these are the fingerless flip top mittens. I'll just put one on and then you can see how it fits. Now I like my fingerless gloves and mittens to be a close fit. I hate them baggy. So these are designed to be a really nice close fit. And then, so when I'm out dog walking, if I need to get my phone out or do anything, I can do that. And then I can just go like that, and my fingertips are protected. Okay. In the instructions, I've included notes for adding a button and an I-cord loop so that you can fix this back. But I haven't, excuse me, I haven't done on these, because I kind of like being able to just do that, rather than sort of going, oh, you know, messing about. I just like, I can poke a couple of fingers out and just do that. Okay, so that's Dusk and Black Tulip, so that's Milburn 4-ply as well, obviously. These all are. And then I also did the fingerless glove version. I'm just putting one of them on, because they do look different when they're on. They look a bit weird. Fingerless gloves look weird when they're flat. Look, it looks a bit weird, doesn't it? But on the hand, ta-da, completely normal. So this is charcoal and fern. Now I chose fern because this lime green is one of my favourite colours, and it doesn't actually sell all that well. I think it might have been at the bottom of the leaderboard at the time when I was choosing these colours. So naturally I was like, well, that needs a helping hand, doesn't it? So and I wanted to make a high contrast version, because obviously these are kind of like heathery and soft, and that one is as well. So they kind of go together, but I did want to do a high contrast version, excuse me, as well. So I think these are super cool. I'd forgotten how much I like fingerless gloves. Like, I've been knitting fingerless mittens like as standard, and actually, I mean, adding the fingers, obviously it's quite a faff, but it is actually worth it, and I'd forgotten that. So yeah, I love these. I think they're super cool. I just like houndstooth generally, to be honest. So that's the Rokeby, the original Rokeby fingerless mittens pattern. That has now been completely re-released and revamped. The whole pattern, well, to be honest, the whole pattern had to be rewritten because it was in an old format which we couldn't just edit. So it had to be completely rewritten from fresh. The charts had to be done, everything. It's actually been a huge amount of work. So that's the Rokeby fingerless mittens and gloves. Again, they're on our website. Please use that as a preference, but they are also on Ravelry too. They've been on there since 2010, so they're just still there. So that's that lot. Little pile of houndstooth, but also now, I mean, it's got to be done, hasn't it? If I can, oh God, if I can untangle this from my phone wire, I will show you. Oh, there we go. So the next project to celebrate Rokeby is the hat version. Just untangle all my needles and stuff. So this is the hat version, which I'm working on now, as you can see. And I'm using compost and thyme. Hope you can see that. So it's like a mint choc chip version. There you go, there's the yarn. Which is quite an unusual combination, I think. Possibly, really, but I really like it. So that's the hat. So there's been quite a lot of swatching and all that kind of thing involved in this. This again is 3mm needles. The gloves or mittens are done on, I use 2.5mm needles, but if you want to size up a bit, you can use 2.75mm needles. And then I've gone for 3mm for these for drape. And it's amazing how much difference it does actually make. So the hat again is 3mm needles because I do want a little bit of drape to it, not too much. So, and also it's much easier knitting on 3mm needles in the round compared to like a 2.5. In all honesty, I think that would put people off. It would put me off because I'm fickle like that. So that's the hat. So that is what I'm working on now when I'm not in the dye shed or photographing yarn and doing all the other things I do. So hopefully I'll have that with you fairly soon. Honestly, I can't say how long it'll take. It just takes as long as it takes. The pattern, once it's written up, it will need test knitting as well. We can't just release this into the wild without, you know, a few people to sort of run through it and go, oh, actually this doesn't work, or, I mean, hopefully they might not, but it does usually happen. So yeah, there'll be a little bit of a wait before this is ready. And now what we'll do is these two patterns are available separately, and then the hat will be available separately too. But what we'll do, because I want to kind of be able to offer them as a bundle, as an alternative once this is done. So what we'll do is we'll run an offer on the hat pattern. We'll sell this one at a discount so that if you've bought the previous two individually, you'll still end up with the discount across the bundle, if that makes sense. I hope that makes sense. Anyway, I will tell you that at the time when it happens. So, in conclusion, Rokeby, fingerless gloves, flip top, fingerless mittens. The flip top's optional, by the way. You don't have to do it. You could just do the fingerless mitts. One ball of each colour. Okay. Rokeby cowl. Again, one ball of each colour. Rokeby hat will also be one ball of each colour. Okay, so obviously you could have them matching, or you could mix up your colours, like I've done with these, so that they kind of, they're all a nice palette together, but they don't specifically match. Now, if you're getting the yarn for them, what I would suggest is that you knit the mittens or gloves first, and then if you've got, say you've got like 10 grams left over or whatever from these, put that in, if you want this to match, put your leftovers into your cowl and just keep going until you sort of running out of yarn. Obviously you do need enough yarn for this. I'm not sure how much you'll need to weigh your bottom hem, see how much you use, and then keep knitting until you've got the same amount left for the top hem, if that's what you're doing. But it would be quite a good way to use up leftovers from another matching project, basically, is what I'm trying to say. So if you're doing both, I would do the cowl second. Okay, so that's it for today. Oh, I'll tell you what, I'm going to record a video of me knitting the stranded colourwork so that you can see how I do it. And I will do it at full speed, and then I'll do it slow so that you can watch either speed. And if I can get to grips with a bit of video editing, which I really need to get sorted out, then what I'll do is I'll add that onto the end of this. So hopefully this video will fade into some knitting, so that if you just want to have a look at technique, then you can do. If I can't get that to work, then this video will just end. So, and I'll upload the knitting separately, but we'll see how I get on. So that's all for today. I am going to go and dye some Hayton double knit next. That's in support of patterns, a couple of patterns that have just been released, which have been in our newsletters. And so I shall go and crack on, and I will see you next time, and who knows what I'll have for you. Okay, bye.